They told us to be strong. They told us to win. They never told us what to do when the war ends, so we kept fighting ghosts and calling it masculinity. Vinland Saga isn't a Viking story. It's a story about the violence men inherit and the courage it takes to break that cycle. From the moment we met Thorfinn, he's a ball of rage, and we call that strength. Because nothing says heroic masculinity like trying to stab your way through your trauma. Let's be honest, society hands boys one emotional tool, a sledgehammer. You're mad, hit something. You're sad, call it mad, and still hit something. You're scared, pretend you're mad, then hit something dramatically while making eye contact with the camera. Thorfinn didn't mourn, he seethes, and society applauds it because we're taught that rage equals strength, even when it's just grief wearing war paint. A study in the journal Emotion found that chronic anger often comes from unresolved sadness and threatened identity. In plain English, we lash out when we don't know who we are, especially when our worth feels attacked. Sound familiar? Thorfinn isn't angry because it makes him strong. He's angry because it's the only identity he has left. His father dies. His innocence dies. And Thorfinn doesn't get therapy. He gets a front row seat to a Viking murder tour. So what does he do? He builds his personality out of knives and fury. He thinks, if I keep fighting, maybe I'll matter. But the more he fights, the less he knows who he even is. Think of the dude who just got dumped. But instead of healing, he rage posts gym selfies and quotes Jordan Peterson out of context like a personality replacement. Same principle, different century. Rage is loud. It feels like control, but it's a smokescreen. Real control? That's when you can sit with your grief without needing to perform for the crowd. Masculinity isn't how long you stay angry. It's how soon you're willing to be honest. Because the real battlefield, it's not the duel, it's what you're avoiding after. Thors gives us the answer in the first episode, but we weren't ready to hear it. Let's face it, when Thors said a true warrior doesn't need a sword, most of us thought, okay Yoda, sure, now please go and swing that axe again, because we didn't want peace. We wanted proof. We wanted flex. We wanted battle. The tragedy? Thors was the blueprint for healthy masculinity. Calm, present, purpose-driven. Which is wild because this man had stoic dad energy so strong he could have raised Guts, Naruto, and Eren all at once, and they'd have all turned out fine. And we tossed him aside like he was a side character in Thorfinn's rage arc. Research from Clinical Psychology Review shows that traditional masculine norms, like emotional stoicism, dominance, and aggression, are directly tied to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and violence. Translation: the tough guy script makes men sick and sometimes dangerous. Thors didn't play that game. He rewrote the script. His message wasn't weakness. It was emotional regulation, a skill the APA says predicts success in love, work, and health. Thors had that down, and the show kills him off immediately. When Thors is surrounded by Astolad's men, he doesn't panic, he doesn't posture, he disarms, literally. And it's not because he's given up, it's because he's operating on a different frequency than every other man in a room. He's not trying to win the fight, he's trying to end the cycle. But what does the world do to men like that? It kills them. Because masculinity in fiction is like, he cried, weak. He paused before swinging, weak. He didn't decapitate 5 dudes on sight, canceled. And then it tells boys to be real men, meaning the opposite. Think about that teacher or mentor who actually listened. Calm, confident, didn't raise their voice. You respected them more because they didn't have to prove anything. Now think about the guys who yelled just to feel big. Exactly. We didn't ignore Thors because he was wrong. We ignored him because he was right. And being right would mean we'd have to change. And change is terrifying. Where are you still holding the sword? And what would it take to finally lay it down? Thors didn't need a sword because he knew himself. That's not weakness, that's maturity. But maturity rarely gets applause, especially when everyone's still obsessed with looking tough. That's how warriors are made. But what if the battle isn't outside, it's inside? The quietest scenes in Vinland Saga are the most violent. We like to think silence is peaceful, But let's get real. There's a kind of silence that's not calm. It's frozen. It's shut down, a dead signal. And that's exactly what we see with Thorfinn on Ketil's farm. He's not healing, he's dissociating. Alive, but not living. That numb silence, that's not peace. It's survival mode with no off switch. Like when you say, I'm good, but haven't felt a real emotion since 2021. A study in the Journal of Traumatic Stress found that emotional suppression after combat trauma leads to higher PTSD symptoms, including guilt, depression, and isolation. That's Thorfinn in Season 2. He's gone from warrior to worker, but instead of talking or even screaming, he just stares into the dirt. Because when emotions are too overwhelming and society never taught you how to feel them, you shut down. You survive by disappearing. Look at his dream sequence in episode 5, a black ocean of corpses. His younger self asks, whose lives did we take? And adult Thorfinn can't answer. Because acknowledging that pain means facing a truth scarier than death. That person he became, the killer, wasn't him, but it was. That emotional contradiction, it tears him in half. And that's the real violence. Ever been through a breakup or trauma where you should cry but don't? You just lie in bed, scrolling, numb, ghosting your own emotions like they're an awkward group chat. You're not resting, you're buffering. It feels safe, but it delays healing, and it costs years. Thorfinn isn't free on that farm. He's imprisoned in silence. And the scariest part, no one can see the bars but him. Emotional repression doesn't make you strong. It just makes your pain quieter. Healing starts when you stop being quiet about what broke you. Healing is harder than fighting, but it's the only way forward. The world keeps telling men that strength means not feeling, that to be real is to be emotionally bulletproof. But here's the truth. Numbness isn't strength, it's self-erasure. Thorfinn spent years avoiding his guilt, his sadness, his memories, but avoidance isn't healing. It's just pain with a time delay. And when those feelings finally catch up, they don't knock, they break in. Psychologists call it emotional integration, recognizing, naming, and processing your emotions. It's a pillar of emotional intelligence, and it predicts better health, relationships, and resilience. In short, feeling your feelings is a superpower. Like emotional Spider-Man, but instead of webs, you shoot accountability. A 2018 study from Emotion found that people who suppress their emotions report higher anxiety, depression, and disconnection from others. Translation: if you never let yourself cry, you also can't truly connect. You can't fully live. Thorfinn's turning point isn't a duel, it's a memory. He dreams of the people he's killed, sees their faces, their blood, his younger self watching. And for once, he doesn't push it down. He doesn't bury it with blade and bravado. He breaks. He confesses to Einor, I've killed too many to count. Not with pride, not with drama, with pain and presence. And for the first time, he feels it all. That's the moment everything changes. You ever have that one breakdown in the middle of a totally normal Tuesday? Like you're just doing dishes and suddenly you're crying into the sink because you never processed your dad leaving 10 years ago? That's your emotional dam cracking. It's uncomfortable, it's raw, but it's also real. And real is where healing begins. Thorfinn doesn't become a man when he picks up a sword. He becomes one when he puts it down. Not because he has to, because he chooses to. That's not cowardice, that's clarity. True masculinity isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally accountable, owning your past, feeling your pain, and still choosing peace. The world doesn't need more warriors. It needs men who know when to fight and when to kneel in the dirt and plant something new. Vinland Saga isn't about Vikings. It's not about war. It's about what happens when the sword is no longer enough. Because the greatest enemy is the pain you refuse to face. And the strongest men are the ones who finally do. Thorfinn didn't need a crown or a kill count. He needed a hoe. For farming, not the internet kind. Let's be clear. Because sometimes the real flex is growing potatoes. instead of trauma. So ask yourself, what are you planting now that the war is over?